Determined to end their relationship, she befriended a bouncer who assumed the role of her bodyguard in exchange for sex. Chosen solely because he was much bigger than rich, their ungratifying relations improved with the addition of a gram of coke, but still bordered on awful because no razor could keep up with the steroids he injected, so once they were naked, it felt like she was wrestling with a cactus. Now it's time for Puppets, Pupils, and Producers, a story of mind over matter. Cassie financed her post-secondary education slinging beer in the city's most popular club. Frequently, Rich would complain that between college and working Fridays and Saturdays at the bar, she didn't have much time for him. Rich decided to study finance at college instead of university and took a bus back and forth from the institution's main campus an hour away. Working on weekends as well, he'd gone from stealing money from the drive-in to stealing money from the driving range attached to a hoity-toity country club where he was hoping to eventually earn a position in management. She missed spending as much time with him, but she didn't appreciate that he expected her to accommodate his schedule and made little effort to work around hers. His usual tactic of telling her she was damaged goods wasn't as effective as well, because the men at the club were telling her otherwise, and he knew she was becoming more confident. Cassie wasn't lying when she said she fell into a ditch and hit her head, but she omitted the part about Rich refusing to take her home, and that after an hour of driving in circles, she finally opened her door while the car was moving and threatened to jump. What she did absolutely lie about was telling the doctor she'd slipped while taking a roadside pee, because the truth was that her bouncing brain didn't register what happened next. Regardless, partner violence was suspected, so a social worker met with Cassie, but she denied any issues. Assuring he would stay with her, they let her go home with Rich, who took her to a motel where he kept his word and woke her up every hour to make sure she was still making sense. But she couldn't make sense of it all and realized the scenarios of her jumping or being pushed were both alarming. Lying to the social worker wasn't sitting well with her either. So while her concussed brain pounded, her confused mind went through his list of infractions. Yet, she decided it wasn't abuse because he wasn't hitting her. Cassie wanted to surprise Rich with a fancy dinner, concert tickets, and a night in a downtown Toronto hotel for his birthday. She'd taken the weekend off and needed to speak with Rich's boss so he'd get the time off too. Thinking he was at the driving range, she stopped at the country club and spotted Rich in the restaurant enjoying a meal with a beautiful young woman. She said they were through, and once again, in that very moment, she meant it. As usual, she threw his letters in the garbage and ignored his calls, but he'd show up at her college or wait outside the hospital when she was training. He'd call her friends and pressure them to talk some sense into her, and he'd show up at the club when she was working. No matter how many times she told him they were done, or how many times she lied and said there was someone else, he wouldn't stop. Determined to end their relationship, she befriended a bouncer who assumed the role of her bodyguard in exchange for sex. Chosen solely because he was much bigger than rich, their ungratifying relations improved with the addition of a gram of coke, but still bordered on awful because no razor could keep up with the steroids he injected, so once they were naked, it felt like she was wrestling with a cactus. On the final night of their tryst, they closed the club and went to his house. Rich followed them and circled the block on his new motorcycle while they enjoyed a drink and a couple of lines. The usual ensued, but all she could focus on was the sound of Rich's bike going around the block over and over again. Timing her departure, Cassie got in her car and began her journey home. On a stretch of road without streetlights, she spotted one headlight in her rearview mirror and knew it was Rich. Driving dangerously close, he forced her to pull over, and even though he still denied cheating, he begged her to forgive him. He said he couldn't live without her and didn't care if she'd slept with another man because they were meant to be together forever. Growing weary from his relentlessness, she took him back, and the day after she graduated from college, he asked her to marry him. She said yes, because she'd resigned herself to the fact that he'd never let her leave him, and she'd accepted their love story could only end one of two ways, and both involved death.